Lawmakers on Capitol Hill reacting to President Trump's military strike on Syria. The president getting support from both sides of the aisle. Other members of Congress, well, they think they should be involved going forward. Listen.
It was the right thing to do. Number one, it was legal. It had to be done, but he was in violation of an agreement that we were guarantors of.
There is no legal justification for this. President Trump's doing this, finally waking up to the atrocities in Syria, is a good thing, but he should not have done this without coming to Congress.
This president reacted to events which were so horrific that it required American reaction.
The question is what comes next. If he's going to continue to use force, he really needs to consult with Congress and tell us exactly what authorization he would like to have.
I think it was a welcome demonstration of America's commitment, but what comes next is harder.
Joining me now is Lawrence Jones, TV host on The Blaze, radio host of The Lawrence Jones Show, and a conservative commentator. Also, Scott Bolden, former chairman of the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C., and a Democratic strategist. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking to us.
Good afternoon. Hey, Julia.
You know, Lawrence and Scott, you just heard these top-ranking lawmakers in both parties, many applauding the missile strike, even Senate Minority Leader. And this one, I don't know about you, came as a bit of a surprise. Chuck Schumer, because this is the first time he's had anything positive to say about the Trump administration. And he released a statement saying this, and I'll read it for you, making sure Assad knows that when he commits such despicable atrocities, he will pay a price, is the right thing to do. Is this an issue, Scott, that can actually unite Democrats and Republicans?
Well, at least on this particular issue, listen, using chemical weapons against your own people, who does that? It's a war crime, and I think that the Trump administration had to respond to that. In regard to Schumer, I think he's absolutely right. I think he's going to get a lot of Democrat and Republican support on this issue because I think Democrats are frustrated with Aleppo. We're frustrated with the prior administration, and at least we're where we are right now. Now, that begs the question, where are we with Russia, Assad? Are we in? Are we out? Do we have a plan for getting in and a plan for getting out? Those are the hard questions, and I think Congress has to be consulted on that. And I think the Democrats will be very supportive in regard to resolving this issue.
Lawrence, President Bush, he kept his promise. I mean, he said he wouldn't discuss military strategy publicly, and he didn't, then acted quickly and swiftly. Many politicians, though, who initially lacked confidence in how President Trump might take advice from his military commanders back when he was running, believe that this is a president should deal with red lines. Now there are no red lines. How does this play out in Washington?
Julie, I think it's important to recognize that this president inherited this mess. He didn't establish the red lines, but he definitely enforced the red lines. I think it's important when we're talking about military strategy. As you said, President Trump said during the campaign that he would not discuss this publicly. And I think it's also important to note that what he did, this strike, I mean, he could have took out 6 of them. But this was the most restrained option he could enforce. And I think he did a great job implementing it. I think he took the advice of the generals. I think they have his back. I don't think this is a political issue. I think that the president is on the right track on this.
You know, Senators Marco Rubio, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, okay, they have been a bit opposed to the president's policies, but they have all in support. They have praised the president, saying that this was an important step in bringing to a close the chaos that has happened in Syria for years. But then there are Republicans that are not on board. They are not supporting the president's decision. Senator Rand Paul, for example, saying that the president needs congressional authorization for military action as required by the Constitution. And Congressman Justin Amash of Michigan echoing Paul's remarks, tweeting, airstrikes are an act of war. Atrocities in Syria cannot justify departure from Constitution, which vests in Congress power to commence war. Now, under the Constitution, as we know, the White House only needs to seek approval in an act of war, which this is not. It's in response to an atrocity and an act of war, but it's not necessarily declaring war.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. I think that's... I'm sorry. I think it's subject to presidential interpretation. 1, 2, you could argue that under the 2003 congressional authorization in regard to the Iraq war that he could go in and do this strike. But again, it's subject to interpretation. The reality is what everyone's concerned about, Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate, is what does this mean? Does this get us deeper in? And if we do, what is our overall strategy? The president has got to explain that, and I think he'll find some some bipartisan support, if not perfect support, but he's got to go to Congress to at least have that discussion.
All right. Lawrence Jones, Scott Bolden. Scott, go ahead. Real quick.
I don't think that this is an interpretation issue. I think that the president is in his power. But remember, this has been done over 125 times. President Obama did the same thing with Syria. I think this was a restrained option. This is not war. And I think those senators should be reminded that we have to do something when it comes to innocent children and families being targeted by another country.
All right. Lawrence Jones, Scott Bolden. That's all the time we have.
They got to go to Congress.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.